Welcome back to Recruiting Blitz. I'm Tim Verghese. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Before we get started, be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel. We're gonna get right into it. Not much to talk about from this past week, just in terms of visits. Nebraska was practically off just because of the Easter weekend, and so now we look ahead to uh, the Husker Games, April 26th. Nebraska's hosting. Obviously a different version of the spring game. Won't be a traditional spring game, although, as we know, as Matt Rule said on Thursday, there's now going to be some type of scrimmage featured in that game just to showcase some of the guys that aren't expected to make the 105 or are battling for a spot under 105 man roster. And so there's going to be some element of a scrimmage, but there'll be plenty to showcase. There's going to be some games inside Memorial Stadium. There's going to be a volleyball showcase. There's going to be a lot more happening around campus. And so Nebraska will have visitors on campus. Won't be a traditional spring game type visit list, but it's a good group of guys already expected to be in town. I expect that visit list to grow as we get further on into the week. And so we'll have a full a list of just the top names to know here at the end of this video. Before we get into that, did want to touch on just some developments over the last week or so. First off, Nebraska four-star defensive back target Devin Jackson announced he was backing off his commitment to Florida late last week. Florida picked up his commitment last summer, and but he continued to make some visits, and though he'd stayed pretty steadfast with that Florida commitment, and it felt at one point tough for anyone to move him off. He chose to reopen his recruitment, and he's told rivals that he's planning on kind of taking his time here and fully opening it up. Although I do think there's a few schools at the top of his mind, a few schools that he's visited here in the spring that are standing out to him, including Nebraska. He's been to Nebraska twice this spring, visited back in February for Elite Junior Day, visited early in April for a practice alongside his teammate, three-star defensive back Danny Odom. Nebraska is now scheduled to get Odom and Jackson back for official visits on June 20th. And so that's going to be a really good opportunity for Nebraska to impress those two guys that are really pushing for the duo. Obviously, both those guys are high school teammates, but have been kind of treating their recruitment separately until the spring. Odom, has interest in Penn State, originally being from Pennsylvania, has an interest in a few schools that Jackson didn't. But so far this spring, they've made a lot of visits together. They've been playing 7-on-7 together. And I think the opportunity to play together is something they're both really intrigued by, something they're really pursuing, and Nebraska's really offered them that. Addison Williams has done a really good job here since landing at Nebraska, offering both those guys his ties to Orlando, being from UCF, have Nebraska in really good position here heading into the summer. And so I like where Nebraska stands. I think, top contenders here. They're battling Oklahoma, who's in the mix, got them on campus earlier this spring too. Georgia's in the mix. Florida's still in the mix for both those guys. Miami's in the mix. Clemson's in the mix. Georgia Tech's in the mix. We could see a few more schools potentially throw their hat in the ring now that Jackson is publicly, backed off that Florida commitment. But I really like where Nebraska stands heading into the summer. I don't think this is a done deal by any means, but I like where Nebraska stands at this point, and I think they're going to have an opportunity to potentially close the deal with both those guys come June 20th, that official visit weekend, but both those guys will be in town. Nebraska made the top 10 for priority offensive line target, Jax Tanner, but that's a recruitment. We've talked about Tanner in the past, and I don't know if I've talked about it here necessarily, but I'm kind of fading Nebraska's chances with Tanner at this point. He visited here this spring for the first time, missed a string of other visits, and while he talked about Donovan Raiola and talked about how much he enjoyed his coaching style and enjoyed seeing the campus, I don't think Nebraska left the impression that he expected, or left a strong enough impression, I think, compared to schools like Wisconsin and Michigan, Oregon, Boise State, a few schools that have been in the mix. I've had him on campus before, and again, not really sure exactly what went wrong, but it doesn't, of this 10, I feel like Nebraska's on the back end of that 10, and if he were to schedule official visits now, I don't think Nebraska's in line to get one, but. Who knows? Donovan Raiola has come from behind in the past, and he's done a really good job of just maintaining contact. Keith Williams is working here too. I don't think this is on either of those guys. I don't think this is on the staff at all. In fact, talking to Tanner, he had nothing but really good things to say about Donovan Raiola. But again, for whatever reason, that Nebraska visit didn't go as well as expected, and so now it's a situation where he's got that top group. I think Oregon and Michigan are just two schools to beat. I think BYU, Boise State, Wisconsin, or a few other schools in that mix as well. And Nebraska, like I said, kind of on the back end of that top 10, but we'll see if they can get him back for an official visit. I could see them, very quickly surging back up, potentially making it. But at this point, I think they're on the outside looking in. as he puts together his OV schedule. Nebraska also made the top five for Brian Bonner, four-star running back out of Valencia, out in California. But this is another one I've talked about for a bit now. I don't think this is going to end up going Nebraska's way. I think two schools on the West Coast, Washington and UCLA, have a leg up on the rest of the pack. I think Notre Dame had them on campus early this spring. They made a really strong impression. There's some that believe Notre Dame's now the school to beat. But I think those three programs in particular have a leg up on Nebraska. But now that he's got this top five, he's going to make official visits to all five programs. And Nebraska's going to get one of those visits, and that's an opportunity. I think it's notable that Nebraska's stuck. And if you want to look at it, optimistic, pessimistic, the pessimistic view is, yeah, they're running at least in fourth at this point of that top five. But a school like Michigan was for a long time a top contender. Michigan did not make the top five. Nebraska did, despite Nebraska not having had him on campus at all this calendar year. Nebraska has had him on campus twice to this point. They got him on campus last spring. uh, EJ Bartel went and visited him last year, and he also got back on campus in the season, I believe. And so he's been on campus twice. And so at this point, um, like I said, fading Nebraska's chances here. Don't think they're going to win this recruitment, but the fact they're getting him back for an official visit is notable. And again, anything can happen during OV season. I think there is something about Nebraska that's attractive to him. The fact that they've stuck around this long. I do think EJ Bartel's done um, as good of a job as you can do here. But ultimately, I think the draw of staying closer to home, staying on the West Coast, and the draw of Notre Dame and their kind of tradition at running back right now is tough to overcome. As for moving ahead, we also wanted to discuss real quick Jet Tamala, of course, the in-state quarterback committed to Iowa State. There's been some discussion about whether Nebraska should consider offering what they should do there. Um, Obviously, they've got their 26, Nebraska's got their 26 quarterback in Dayton Raiola, and there wasn't really a whole lot of smoke with Nebraska and Tamala. They obviously had him on campus for a workout last summer during camp season, but they've kind of let Tamala handle his own recruitment. Nebraska's kind of done their own thing. And, I think both sides is kind of understanding of the situation at this point. The biggest implication for Nebraska here, which no surprise really to anyone who's been keeping up with this, but, I still think Isaac Jensen is not going to end up staying in state. The three-star tight end that has a Nebraska offer out of Millard South. I think Jensen ultimately follows his teammate and his childhood best friend, Tamala, to Iowa State. Those two team up back together for the Cyclones. But Tamala's going to take his own time with this decision, has some SEC interest, has some general national interest. He's excited to explore this summer. And so we'll see what happens in that recruitment. But at this point, I don't think it's going to go Nebraska's way. Now, let's look ahead to the visitor list expected for the spring game or the Husker Games, as they call it, later this week. Nebraska is hosting a handful of 26 guys on campus. I think that list is going to grow as we get closer to the game. Not expecting a massive list of 26 visitors, but it'll be a good opportunity with top 27 targets. Uh, 27 elite edge, Zane Rowe out of Denton Gyers visiting. If you haven't read our story on Zane Rowe, go check that out. I'll link that in the description. A guy with some intriguing Nebraska ties, grew up, spent some time early in his childhood in Lincoln, has some family ties to the state, and has been interested by Nebraska. And so this is going to be his first opportunity on campus in a while, and an opportunity for this new staff, specifically Terry Braden and Philip Simpson, to impress him. And so that's going to be that's one of the bigger visits coming up 2027. Offensive lineman Tristan Dare out of Salt Lake Carroll, also in that greater Dallas area. He will be visiting that weekend. 2027 four-star offensive lineman Kelsey Adams, one of the top offensive tackles in the country, will be visiting. We've talked plenty about Nebraska's kind of efforts in this 27 cycle, getting some of these top offensive tackles in town. Here's another one of the top 5 to 10 offensive tackles in the country getting into town. And then 2027 four-star running back Noah Roberts out of Chandler Basha High School down there in Arizona. Nebraska had his teammate, four-star offensive lineman Jake Hildebrand, the number 3 offensive tackle in the 27 class, on campus earlier this spring. Really impressed him. Nebraska's already had Roberts on campus for a visit here on Elite Junior Day. They're going to get him back for a game in the fall. They're working to get Hildebrand and Roberts back together for a game in the fall. I think Nebraska's a real contender here early on. Alabama and top SEC schools, USC, Oregon, of course, are among other top programs in the mix for Roberts, but Nebraska's done really good work early on, have had him on campus multiple times, are still scheduled to keep getting him back on campus. I think they're going to be a contender here for a while. I think they've comfortably earned some staying power. This is another opportunity to impress, and potentially work themselves up that list of top contenders in his recruitment. In the 2026 class, you're going to see Jamar Owens, three-star safety out of Georgia. This guy we haven't really talked about a whole lot, but a guy Nebraska has kept an eye on, a safety target that would make some sense for them here in this cycle. They're getting him on campus for the very first time. The 2026 offensive lineman Leon Noel Jr. out of Edna Carr down there in Louisiana is making his first visit. Noel plays tackle currently, but is likely going to move inside to guard at the next level. It's another visit for uh, opportunity for Nebraska with an rising interior target, a guy that they haven't had on campus before, but one they offered back in January and are excited to get on campus for the first time. And so, like I said, I think that 26 group will continue to add some names. I'd expect, in-state guys like Torrey Pittman and Kylan Haney to pop back into campus either for a practice this week or back this weekend. Could see 2077 offensive tackle target Matt Erickson, another in-state guy, pop back into town this weekend as well. And so, stay tuned to Inside Nebraska.com and the Insiders Board for some visit updates as we get closer to April 26th. And on that note, that'll probably do it for us here um, with this episode. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know it's a bit of a shorter one, but just not much to talk about. And I did just want to touch on some top headlines, preview the visit weekend ahead. And like I said, there's going to be more names added to this list. I may put out another video closer to Friday, just previewing the weekend in full. So stay tuned for that. Potentially, we'll get back at open practice this week. So stay tuned for our highlights from that, our rapid recaps from those, and press conference videos as well. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll be back next week.